welcome to Combat Thoughts. I'm Robbie.
I'm Lee.
And I'm Alex.
We're going to take a deeper look at culture and philosophy behind martial arts.
All right, so commercialization of gyms. Yeah, I mean, where do we really want to start? Like, good thing, bad thing? What do we think?
I can start. I personally don't see much merit in it other than for the sole purpose of making money for the people that want to commercialize it. But for the members, I guess you could see it in the sense of if a gym is more commercialized, there's potential for there to be more money and therefore better facilities. That is maybe...
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should define exactly what we mean by the commercialization of gyms. That would
Right.
actually probably help if we
said
that.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just about turning it into... I guess it's the shift between sort of a very non-commercial martial arts gym might be just a group of people who train martial arts and, you can join if you want and you don't have to kind of thing. And it's just people and an area. Obviously, that's how a lot of them start. And it's how a lot of people start them. And you just like find people around the town who can... That's like a very common story with like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, right? Especially not so much nowadays because it's become more commercialized as a sport, let alone individual gyms. But back in the day, it would always be like, oh yeah, me and a mate like paid people to let us choke them, and that's how we got good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Some of them carried on.
Even over here, it was like early UFC, pre-UFCs. It was like two brothers would get a video and then just beat the shit out of each other in a room.
Yes, and then slowly that got more people in, and that commercialized into a gym. And obviously, the commercialization aspect is about expansion of the gym, like making it partly about expansion of the gyms, partly is about franchising it and turning it into these different organizations that Lee is afraid to talk about for getting sued, so we're not going to mention it. But yeah, I guess it's about the expansion and the does get geared more towards money making.
So I think for me, there's a point where it needs to happen in terms of some people need to take the plunge, commercialize it, make it something you pay for to basically drive the quality of the teaching, the facilities and things like that. Otherwise, everything's going to be in a shed. Everything's going to be one guy in the middle of nowhere, and it's not kind of going to give you everything you need. So commercialization is good. I think there's a point where it gets too much, where you're scheduling seminars once a month and giving like bullshit gradings once a month, and you're charging people 50 quid for the privilege of that. And then you've got a different seminar with the same person every other month because he needs to make his money from your gym and things like that. And then the things of like, oh, you can't wear patches or you can't wear this brand of gi and things like that's when it becomes control. So I think commercialization needs to happen to make the sport bigger, to make it more accessible to people. If you didn't have gyms, we wouldn't be where we are today. But there's a point, and I think I'd probably want to discuss where you think the line is of when is too much commercialization bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the good aspects, especially when you consider something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which gets next to no interest from anyone who doesn't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If we want the sport to grow at all, it's not like boxing or the UFC where you can grow it by advertising more and having more public appeal. It only really grows by bringing people into the fold. So for stuff like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in order to make the sport better, you kind of have to commercialize it to an extent. In that you need to just bring people in. Is the only way to get more people, and getting more people always makes things better. Partly for people who do it professionally, and partly for people who do it. Like the more people who get involved in it, the more people I can talk to and not bore the shit out of about jiu-jitsu, which is always a plus. And also, the more the sport develops, the more competitions get put on, the more shows get put on, the more techniques get developed. So obviously growing the sport is important, and you can't do that without money at the end of the day. So you have to commercialize it. And also, I want to roll on mats where I'm not going to get tapeworm.
Yeah, of course. But now we're kind of more talking about the sport, whereas if we're talking, I know that's sort of synonymous, that like the process is synonymous, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think, like, to an extent that Lee is mentioning in terms of commercialization, you don't necessarily need those levels of commercialization in order for the sport to grow. I mean, there could be arguments for and against. I would argue against it. I don't think it's necessary, and you see it in some of the most successful gyms who allow a bit more freedom. They still attract a lot of people. Now, is it possible for a gym to be successful financially, therefore being somewhat commercialized, in just being a really good hub for techniques, for coaching, and just a pool of talent? I think the answer to me seems like yes, that is possible. For example, I'm thinking of Renzo Gracie, who the gym is not necessarily something like, here I go and say it, Gracie Barra, which is a proper franchise. As far as I understand, there aren't that many Renzo Gracie gyms out there as compared to, say, Gracie Barra or other franchises. I don't know what you guys think.
I don't mind. Well, I mean, I think there are two bits. Like, one bit you mentioned, Lee, about like not being allowed to train elsewhere. I don't actually think that's related to commercialization, because you can have that in a little like, if they didn't make any money but they were still super strict about where you trained, it wouldn't be any more commercialized.
Yeah.
That would just be them being dicks. So I don't know if that is part of it. I think commercialization is purely things to do with making money in one way or another. Like, even if you're not making money personally, you're bringing more revenue into the gym. But yeah, I think the problem is when, and the problem's actually not also with franchising, because as far as I'm aware, Straight Blast Gym and GB Top Team, Top Team in general, right? I don't think they like charge people for accessories.
Yeah, and you're not like paying a membership fee to be part of that. Like, you're paying your membership, but it's not like and here's your Top Team card and that's £50 a month. Like, it's not like that. I think franchising is good, especially with commercialization, because it allows people who are trained and who are elite to then have a revenue stream from that. Like,
yeah,
you
and
look
also
at people who are class, they wouldn't be able to make money, so they leave the sport. It keeps people in the sport. We get better training, we get better coaching. For me, commercialization is when it kicks in, when it's things like charging for all sorts. The thing of not going to other gyms, because that's taking money from you. You should only be paying me. And if you've got enough money to go and train somewhere else, then have another private, because that's my money, you're my student. I think that's bad. But then the other side of it is like when the sport gets kind of watered down. So you see this in kind of Muay Thai, where they'll throw kind of random classes in that are not like just traditional Muay Thai. It's like I don't know, cardio kickboxing, because it sells and people want to come and people want to feel good about themselves and it makes more money. And okay, not perfect for people like me and us, but it's when the sport gets then watered down to the point that it just becomes, let's give the most useless stuff or the things that sells the most, because that's when we need more money.
Yeah, I hate boxer size. It's so bad.
No, that's fair. I hadn't really thought about that. The fact that commercialization might actually take away from the effectiveness of an individual sport. I was more thinking around sort of exploitation of students. But yeah, you're right. Like Muay Thai and boxing, especially. Yeah, I mean, you can't. It's kind of.
I think it also
it's a way to bring people in the door.
Yeah,
it's to an extent. I think so while I used to train, the guy actually would do grades. He would do grading for Muay Thai. Now, under what federation, under what, like, nothing like that exists in Muay Thai. Grades don't exist in Muay Thai. So now you're saying to someone that they're like a blue, or they called it Khans, so it would be like fourth Khan of Muay Thai. And, it's totally up to the guy to say, yeah, that looks good, we'll give you that one, or say no, and then the guy has to pay again to do another grading. And that's a very small gym. And also in that sense, it maybe gives someone a full sense of their abilities, because it's not really objective. It's very subjective to the guy's curriculum that he set up, right? So I always had a problem with that.
I'm
And I think
I'm a ninth degree black belt, and you spar with some guy full of piss and vinegar who's been training really hard, and he just beats the shit out of you.
yeah, exactly. And I would say then commercialization in that sense, because I don't see what else it could be. It's pulling people in for the sake of achieving a belt, which I guess this is playing now into the grades part of it. But I have
that's
a
always been
serious
the
issue with that.
That's always been the push on karate, isn't it? Karate got super commercialized. The belt structure is I did karate when I was 7, so I'm going to bastardize my memory of this. But it's kind of like you cycle through the belts quite quickly. It's a kind of pay for a grading, pat on the back, well done, off you go for your next belt in 2 weeks. And that kind of side of the house, for me, it doesn't sit right, and I don't like it. But as humans, we like gratification. We like to know we're doing better. We like to know we're getting better. And if you don't compete, keeping people in the gym can actually be quite difficult. Like, everybody knows the jump from blue belt to purple belt in BJJ is big. That's why you lose loads of blue belts. And it's kind of like BJJ's kind of kept it a little bit, kept it more traditional to these are the grades. You've got to be a purple belt to be a purple belt. But you do lose a lot of people, and you lose that money. And if that's the kind of thing of keeping your gym open and keeping the lights on, well, if you add a different belt or do them more frequently to keep, 50% of your student base, it's hard to argue against it.
Well, see, the thing is, I'm not openly against having an extra belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't think that's really a problem. But I think the difference there is the way in which you're graded. Because, especially ignoring even the fact that it's Muay Thai you're talking about, any of these martial arts, taekwondo, karate, I don't know about kung fu, but I imagine kung fu could be I don't know. Taekwondo and karate, I know they're like this. You pay for the grades, and that's kind of weird. Because why can't you just do it? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
you're paying your fees, right?
Yeah, I'm paying my fees. I have no issue paying for classes, because hopefully the instructor is very skilled and very good at what they're doing, and it's worth paying for that. But what am I paying for with the grading? Because not only that, but it's not even a good example of how good you are a lot of the time. It's performance. The difference is in jiu-jitsu is that coach sees you in there day in, day out. He knows how good you are and awards you a belt based on that. The other difference, I think, is that whereas it's the fact that jiu-jitsu is so competitive in the class and also has so many people competing outside of the class. It means that the grades themselves are self-regulating, because even if you did accidentally promote someone too soon to purple belt, and then they just get their ass handed to them time and time again by blue belts, you kind of know you messed up somewhere. So at least next time you don't make a mistake. That's the worst case scenario. But in theory, you should see that someone's beating all the other people that are in grade and some of the people above, and you'd be like, maybe now's time. The issue with taekwondo and like Muay Thai in this context is that it's just like,
yeah. I am going to have to say this though. You make it sound like BJJ grades are self-regulating, and to the world's biggest sandbagger, Robbie, we know sandbagging happens.
All right. I will say that they
Mostly
are
a white belt though. Right?
I'm not a sandbagger. That wasn't my fault. I didn't get promoted. It's not my fault. The difference with jiu-jitsu, though, is that, okay, it's not perfectly self-regulating. There are outliers, but at least there's a general consensus of about how good a blue belt is and about how good a purple belt is. And the one thing I would say about jiu-jitsu, the fact that it is related to competition does mean that there's grade inflation.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, purple belts now are much better than purple belts 30 years ago, for the simple fact that if you're only going to promote someone until they're beating a few people in the grade above, or you want to hang on to them for just a couple more months for that one competition so they can get better, the level very, very slowly creeps up.
Yeah.
Whereas the difference with paid ones is that unless you get that next person to do their next belt, you don't get that extra money out of them. So you bring the grades lower and lower and lower.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a real difference between these competition grades and these, I don't know what else to call them, arbitrary paid grades.
Yeah.
There's a real difference between those. I don't think it's actually comparable. And that's why I think adding in an extra belt in jiu-jitsu, it would be unnecessary. But maybe if it kept more people in the door and more people in the sport, it might not be an entirely bad thing.
Yeah, like there is an argument of like I've never done the numbers, but it's pretty disproportionate the amount of people who disappear at blue belt. Like that jump is big, and it's only getting bigger for the reasons you've just said. I completely agree with. A purple belt now is a black belt when the UFC was formed. Say, like
I love the confidence with which we're talking about this, even though I was not born when the UFC was formed.
Was you not?
Were we not? What was it? 1980?
I thought it was 92.
Well, yeah, there we go. 92. Wasn't born then.
Shit, I'm
95.
I'm older than you. Fuck.
I know you are, Lee. But my point is, we don't know these things, but we can see the processes with such certainty that we're like,
yeah,
definitely better now than they were before.
Yeah.
So then there's the grade side of it. So what other parts of like the commercialization of the gym are you kind of against? That's the like what I want to get into. What's the kind of the big faux pas of a gym being kind of super commercialized? For me, it is the kind of watering down of the sport, the cardio kickboxing, the earn your blue belt online and things like that. I'm not a fan of that shit.
Not dropping any names, yeah?
I mean, I'm allowed to say I'm not a fan of earn your blue belt online. I've never met somebody who's earned their blue belt online, but I'm pretty sure I'd be able to take them.
That's a fair point. I hadn't actually thought of the watering down of the sport itself. I think that's actually the main thing I'm opposed against. I hadn't really thought about that. But that aside, coming into this, the main thing I have opposition to is unnecessary exploitation of students, by which I mean, well, the reason I'm not annoyed at grades is because you don't need to pay for them, and they don't make you pay for them, right? The things that are annoying are the things they make you pay for, like patches, but you just don't need to pay for
or whole
them. What does a
gis.
patch? Or branded gis, because what benefit does that have to your ability to do jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah,
Jiu-jitsu is meant to be for everyone, but only if you can fork out £200 for some gi pants, right?
Yeah.
Like, how shitty is that?
Yeah, that's purely for the sake of commercial, like it's for commercial reasons that you would do that. And a commercial also in the sense of, everyone wearing the same thing and representing the same colors and all of that. It all plays a part.
But have you not seen with BJJ, more modern BJJ, the shift to planned gradings? When I first started BJJ, you'd get a stripe on a Tuesday night, or you'd get a blue belt on like a Sunday morning. Like it was quite like when they thought you deserved it, you deserved it. And then I've seen over the last few years, especially, a summer grading, a winter grading, and it's, I don't know, a celebrity coach comes in for a day and then gives out a few belts and charges you 60 quid for the pleasure. Like, I think BJJ has started doing that a bit more.
Well, I certainly hope it doesn't catch on in a big way. I'm not opposed to having group gradings, because how clear is the line between a very good blue belt and a just promoted purple belt anyway? So if
Yeah.
you have a summer grading and a winter grading and you're like a few months either side, I'm not too fussed.
Also, I quite like the summer and winter grading. I think it's a good idea. My issue is when that is purely a revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think that's where it's kind of, you pay a membership, and it is expensive, especially in London. Like, gym memberships are quite expensive, and I'm happy to pay it, and I'll always pay it because I love training. But when you then pay on top of that for seminars, and you pay on top of that for then 2 gradings a year, and then, I don't know, you've got to have your £200 fancy gi pants. I don't know where you're getting them from, but fuck, I don't want them. That to me is when it's kind of becoming a bit too much, and that's they look at each of their students as a wallet rather than students who you're helping, as we've done in previous podcasts, where you're helping them to kind of better their lives, give them more confidence, kind of give them the sport that we all love and like brought us kind of so much happiness. It's instead going, oh, how much money can I take from these? And I think you go, especially with the kind of the trendy gyms, especially BJJ has become quite the cool thing to do. Loads of people have started doing it.
Yeah.
It's got kind of loads of fame because loads of Hollywood actors have done it and lost loads of weight and got kind of jacked quick. It's now become quite trendy. Like, the first gym I trained in was in a mill in Manchester, and I'm pretty sure there was asbestos everywhere. Like, whereas now it's like I can go to some really fancy gyms. And I think there is a worry that, in my mind, there's a worry that the people who run the gyms probably don't train. They see it as a business opportunity, and it's more around maximizing the revenue you can generate from your clients. And I am a purist, rather than helping the people in the gym. This is why I should never run a gym. If somebody said I've not got enough money, I'd be like, fuck it, come train, it's fine. Like,
you're gonna run into the ground.
Yeah, I would bankrupt myself because if somebody was like, "Oh, I'd love to train, but I can't afford your prices," I'd be like, "Fine, come train for free." Like it. I am a bit more of a purist like that.
I know a guy who does that, and the gym's fine. It's just never really. It does seem to be quite tight on money quite a lot of the time. But...
Yeah, and I guess this is the kind of the I don't know if it's a paradox of like, for example, you know, a gym like Daisy Fresh, which I think, Robbie, you've seen that video now.
I watched that yesterday. Those people are fucking mental.
Crazy, right?
They are insane living like that.
Yeah,
it was the bit where they had their gis in the washing machine, and then they were going through to the toilets to get the squeezy soap to then throw in on top of their gis in the washing machine.
They're just like, well, soap is soap, right?
And then they're like, oh, have you ever thought about putting a washing machine in, like, unrelated washing machine thing, because it's in a laundromat? They're like, oh, have you ever thought about putting a washing machine with coins in here to make a bit of money on the side? They're like, yeah, we only get cold water. They've been there for like 12 years and they only have cold water. Are you fucking meant pulling the mattresses out onto the mats to go to bed?
Sleep? Yeah, people sleeping in the gym. Yeah, it's insane.
Oh my God.
So there it's like, maybe a bit of commercialization wouldn't be such a bad thing.
This, yeah, you'd have electricity and warm water and a bit of extra.
It would be nice to have a proper toilet.
Living there.
Yeah, and they're living there.
Pay for healthcare, because that sounds like you're going to get quite a lot of staff.
Yeah, and most of them didn't have insurance, actually. That's another one. But you know, the mats were like, they were all scaly, you know, when mats get all scaly, and yeah, it just doesn't look good. So I think
about like finding a dead raccoon in the ceiling.
Yeah, it's just insane stuff. I mean, the problem is, those guys, okay, they're not like
Mitchell trains.
with raccoons.
No, but they do all sound like Bryce Mitchell.
Well, in any case, it seems like there are guys in there who are like on the up, and the gym is fairly successful. But at the same time, you know, you have Renzo Gracie, which is commercially doing really well. Sure, it's got the Gracie name behind it, but in any case, I think there are examples of really successful gyms which have had enough money to make the gym look good and be, you know, safe, but also not rip. I can't really say for sure because I've never trained at Henzo Gracie, but I think it's not one of those gyms which rips you off on every occasion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Henzo's is very expensive to train at, but also they have a huge demand for people to come. I mean, I'm assuming it's expensive to train at. I think I heard that once, and I'm just assuming that it is. But the thing is, it is central New York. They are going to have to spend an absolute bucket of money on rent, and even then, they're going to have such a huge demand for people to come and train. I don't think you should make things cost prohibitive, but I'm not against people getting paid. If people are the best in the world at something, they should be able to hike the prices up. I don't like it if they were to hike the prices up so far that it became like super elitist. But you know, an expensive membership wouldn't be amiss in this case.
That's the point. I think you've probably made it a lot more eloquently than I wanted to, or than I could. But I would pay more money to go and train with the Dan and her Death Squad because they will teach me a shitload and I will learn a lot. And it's a trade-off for me, right? Do I want to spend more money to do that? What I think annoys me is when smaller gyms or gyms that are kind of less established or the training isn't as high quality lower their price point to entry so you get in the door. But then it's like add-ins in games, right? Like you see, it's free to play, and then you've got to keep paying for more. And like that's the one that annoys me, where it's like instead of being £200 a month, it's £50 a month, and you think, do you know what, money's a bit tight. I want to go to that gym, and you do. And then every third week, it's I need £50 for this seminar, and if you don't go, forget about getting your next belt. And you need to come to your Muay Thai seminar that we've just made up, and we'll give you a purple headband. Like it's. I'm like, because the grading structure in Muay Thai can be whatever you want. Like,
literally, yeah.
That's what annoys me when it's supplementary and supplementary. If your product is good enough and your teaching is good enough, people will want to come to you.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I think I agree with that. I think it's almost quite, I can't think of the word, like sneaky or like kind of nefarious when the way you make the money is by putting logos on gis that you're damn well buying for cheaper than people would buy their normal gis for anyway, because you're going to buy them at wholesale, budget, and then you put some logos on them, you jack the price. When you're making the money that way round, rather than being honest and being like, hey, look, I'm fucking good at my job, I want to get paid double the amount, and you look at the price, you're like, it's expensive, but it's with
let me
Jiu Jitsu man. That seems like a fair trade.
Yes, and I give you an example of where that works well or who has done it well, in my opinion. So the gym owner of Grand Union Jiu Jitsu, formerly known as RGA, basically RGA Gym Box, Cesar Lima, he has his own brand called Grab and Pull, which is actually fairly doing okay. Like I've seen actually in competition people from outside of Grand Union wearing that kit. Now in the gym you can wear whatever you want, but you actually see a lot of people wearing Grab and Pull because they want to support the brand of the gym. Now that's voluntary, it's not a necessity, and I think that's a way more honest way. And if people really like the gym and they love you, they will fucking pay it. But you have to give people the freedom.
But then there's
to
also
be able to
stress.
Sorry,
there's also stress then for you as a brand to provide good gear. If people have a choice and they can buy your gear or somebody else's gear, it has to be good. So you have to maintain a good standard of good gear, what you sell, at a price point people are willing to pay. If it's mandatory to wear the gear, it's monopoly, right? You control the price, you control supply. Like it's blocking people off, and I again just don't like it.
I didn't even think of that. What I was going to say is having expensive kit and being like, this is the kit, it is this much, it is your choice whether to buy it or not, is to me the same as having an expensive class and being like, it's a good class, you can pay this or not.
Yeah.
The issue is when you're like pretending that they're paying for the gis, but in reality they're just paying for membership in a weird way.
Yeah.
Right, that's the difference, I think, and especially since you get the option of wearing that stuff. And I have no issue with people bombarding you with advertisements. Well, maybe if they had a sponsored thing in the middle of the class, like doing an announcement, that might be a bit far. I have no issue with them advertising the kit on the door and selling it in there.
Yeah.
So long as you're being honest, like you're being like, look, you're paying this money for this kit.
Yeah.
Like maybe if when you sold these gis, you said, "Hey, the gi's actually worth this much, and you're spending this much just on the just to be part of the gym, even though it wasn't included in the membership." Maybe if they put that label on there, I'd be a bit more okay with people buying that stuff.
So my
But
first
obviously, I'm being
BJJ, my first BJJ class, I turned up, didn't have a gi, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. I like it. I want to get involved. Where do I buy a gi from?" And the guy who I spoke to wasn't like, "Look at my wares. This one costs £200. This one costs £300." He was like, "Go to eBay, type this in. It's the world's shittest gi, but it's £35, and it'll see you through for a couple of months. And then if you like it and you want to carry on, get yourself a fancy gi." So I went. I got the cheapest gi I could possibly find because you sweat the same. Competition, maybe like it makes 5 grams of difference and whatever. Okay, I've seen the arguments. When you're just starting out or you're just training 3 times a week, cheapest gi, crack on. Now I went the other way and I became a wanker and started buying loads of shoya roll gis and being super trendy. And like, it's fine, that was my choice. But I think I'd have been put off the sport if I'd have turned up to that gym and been like, first class, free class was good. I want to give it another go. I want to carry on. And they was like, cool. And you need to buy our gum shield and our ear guards and our logo and our gi. I'd have been like, right, I don't even know if I'm going to stick at this. £35, negligible amount. Throw a gi on. I did, 12 months in that gi and then started being a bit of a wanker. If you want to buy a shoya roll gi off me, hit me up. I don't wear any of them anymore because of lockdown and I've put weight on.
Ironically, all the Daisy Fresh guys wear shoya roll because shoya roll sponsors that gym.
Yeah, well, Robbie said he doesn't mind adverts, so I'm going to say the Lee shop of shoya roll gis is now open.
Shoya roll, if you want to sponsor us, there is this spot free.
Yeah, I'm only selling them because I've grown out of them, not because I don't like your gear.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also sort of the barrier to entry thing's kind of scummy in the way that even if the gym could be affordable for people to come and join, and it's the whole jiu-jitsu for everyone kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even if the gym's cheap enough, if you're just making the gis too expensive, it's just, I don't know. I'm more for anything that's going to encourage people to join the sport, and scummy things like that aren't going to encourage people to join the sport.
Do you know what I'd quite like? And I think BJJ would take it well. And I think it would work well in BJJ. There's very few people I've met through BJJ who I'd be like, you're a bad person. I think it attracts a lot of good people and all the cliches. It keeps you humble and all that kind of stuff. But like pay what you feel is a kind of as an approach. I think it'd take off really well. Some people are wealthy and can afford to pay a bit more. So Robbie's looking.
You're gonna run this gym into the.
I'm never should open a gym. My business acumen for gyms would be get as many people in there and let them train for 63. But I think I'm more in favour of have people training, let people be introduced to the sport, and I don't know, pay what you want, or if you can't afford it this month, again, shouldn't own a gym, rather than additional add-ons and kind of the over-commercialization. I feel like I've said that point 3 times now, so I'm going to stop.
That's all right, Lee. I think the pay what you feel is almost like I mean, I have to be like realistically. If you have bills that come out regularly, you need money that's going to come in regularly. Pay what you feel isn't going to work. Pay what you feel will be really good for somewhere. I don't know, like.
All right, pay what you feel seminars.
Yes, that could work. Yeah.
Or your grading. If you do 2 gradings, right, and it's we're going to do a special class. I'm going to teach you some of the kind of vault shit that not many people see. Pay what you feel. Thanks for coming. Have a great one, guys. I've solved it. I fixed grading.
I think pay what you feel works really well for, your special little grading things that you've got there. But also, I think it's good as like an intermediary between that point where you're training in someone's shed with a few mats. Then you need to expand and you need to have like mats in a town hall, right? Yeah. Pay what you feel works well there when you don't have regular outgoings and you just want people to come along, and if people really love it, they'll do it. Like that's a good intermediary there, and it's a good way to raise a bit of cash for it. It's not a way to run a gym.
It's not a way to run a business at all. It's I'm an idealist though, right? Come on, give me a break.
All right, so let's sum this up.
Sum this one up. All right, we'll round it up. I don't really know how to sum it up exactly. Don't exploit people. It's scummy. Be honest about what you're charging people for, and don't pay for bloody gradings if you don't have to.
Commercialization isn't bad. Just taking it too far and trying to make your gym into a cash cow is. Don't be dicks. Pay what you feel grading. It's going to take off. I have to call it.
Nice. Good roundup.
Solid.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.